back to the Chronicles for Reader, and I am the aforementioned reader, Varsha. I'm so delighted to have you all here. So we have entered week 2 of the ORILIUM Magical Readathon Autumn Equinox edition of 2024, and it's day 9. I was supposed to film this clip yesterday and officially start out the vlog, but I couldn't because we had this trip to Ernakulam that took up like nearly half the day, and I returned back home at like 12 a.m. today. So yeah, I had no time to film, but it doesn't matter, I'm just doing it now. You might have already seen the clips of that trip that I've included here. So yeah, I'm just going to dive right into my reading updates so far. During week 1, I completed 2 books. I first finished reading Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and after that I read Silverwing by Kenneth Oppel, and both books were absolutely incredible. I really loved them. So we are starting off the readathon with a bang. And with that, we move on to my current read, which is The Stolen Air by Holly Black. And this one, I'm currently on page 320. I did read a bit yesterday. I was supposed to have finished it by now, but for some reason, the last few pages are taking me a while to read. Not that it's not the book's fault. It's just that I haven't really found the opportunity to sit down and read for any period of time. But I'm going to remedy that and finish reading this book as soon as I'm done with this clip. So this one too is something I'm really enjoying, and I've read most of it in week 1 itself. If you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend you check out my vlog. I'll be linking it up here. And now that I'm very close to the end, it's time for me to pick out my next read. And I guess for now we're going to set down fiction reads and pick up my one non-fiction read for the readathon, which is Freedom in Exile by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. This one is something that has been on my TBR for nearly a decade, I'm fairly sure. And I haven't got around to reading it because this was like kept in some boxes upstairs in the attic, and I went there a week ago and got it in preparation for the readathon. So yeah, I can finally read this. I do want to annotate it. I'm quite scared to like write with pen in my book, so I've been sticking with pencil for a while. But for this, I think I'm going to make my first foray into permanent annotations with a pen. Anyway, it's my book and I'm definitely not going to be giving it away, so I might as well, record the most important moments in this. I guess that will be a very good way to engage critically with this writing. So I'm quite excited to read this, and once I'm done with that, we'll think about my next read at that time. Oh, and I nearly forgot. After I finished reading Silverwing, so I always have like an ebook going on every day. Like before I go to sleep, I read 10% of it. So as soon as I finished Silverwing, I picked up my next ebook, which is The Spell Shop, which is like the Guild book club pick for this readathon. And that one, I reached up to the 10% mark. I'm actually supposed to be at the 20% mark, but I didn't read it yesterday because I was very tired. I just like got back, immediately fell asleep. No time to read. But that's fine because technically I did read like 10% more of Silverwing on like the same night. Like I read 20% of the book when I was supposed to space it out. So everything's like properly evenly spaced out by now, so it's fine. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I have like so many days until the readathon is over, so I'll definitely have finished the book by then. Spell Shop, it's like, so I went into it with like a slight apprehension because the cover didn't look that appealing to me. I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I did that. But it's totally cool because I started reading it and I'm like immediately sucked into the pages. Story, it's set in this island empire called the Crescent City. Wait, no, it's not called Crescent City. Crescent something empire, and it's like made up of these strings of islands. And our main character, Kiela, she's a librarian in the capital city of Elysium, and she has a spider plant called Kaz for her assistant, who I think is very adorable. And the beginning of the book, as soon as we reach the first chapter, we see that the library is burning because there's been like some rebellions going on in the city, and the rebels have taken over a lot of the buildings, including the library. So now Kiela has to escape from there. She has already been like sorting out some of the books that she absolutely needs to preserve in one of like the emergency boats of the library. Yeah, this entire place, it's like linked by the sea, so yeah, there's like boats everywhere. And then once the burning begins, she has to like hurriedly stash away some more books and make her way out of the capital city with the books and Kaz, and they set off into the open ocean. She has no idea where she's going, but then an idea strikes and she makes out for one of like the remote islands. It's almost like the countryside, but because this is like an island chain, you know, the farthest flung island, she goes there because that's where she's originally from. Her parents were from that island. She was born there and lived for quite a few years of her life and spent quite a few years of her childhood there until they decided they want to move to the capital city to give her a better chance at education and, you know, make a better future for themselves. But now that she can no longer work over there, the library is burning, her entire life is in shambles, she decides to return back to her childhood home. And when she reaches there, like the place where she grew up, it's like in a terrible state. It's like creeping over with vines and very like dusty because it hasn't been used in several years. And now she has to like clean that place up and make it a home where she can preserve her books and then plan for the future. So far it's like very cute and very like comforting to read. The beginning of the book, it like starts off with like full on rebellions and like burning buildings, but then it like peters out into this like very calm vibes, and it's quite nice. Like it's very cozy to read about, you know, a little cottage by the ocean. And so far we see her beginning to clean that house and make it habitable again. And she also has this neighbor called Laren, and oh yeah, she's very like antisocial. She does not want to talk to people. She's just like completely focused on her work as a librarian. Hasn't talked to a person in like weeks when the book starts out. So yeah, her neighbor tries to be, you know, neighborly towards her, brings her stuff, offers her help, and she's like, I don't need any of that. I've got it. She hasn't got it. It's like honestly a huge project to tackle on her own, but she's very headstrong, and we'll see what happens. The setup has been quite interesting so far, and I'll continue reading that and let you all know what I think. Day 11, and today I actually started attending a new coaching class, which is a month-long affair. So I think that I won't be able to read as much as I have been reading for this last week, continuing onwards from now. But that's alright, because eventually I'm going to finish my TBR by the end of the month anyway, so it doesn't matter that I won't be able to always hit my 100-page mark for the day. That's totally fine. And I have been making quite a lot of substantial progress, because day before yesterday I finally finished The Stolen Heir, and this was such a cool book. Like the ending, it was so unexpected. I thought that the plot twist would be a particular thing, and the whole time I was like convincing myself that this is what's going to happen. I was like lauding myself for being so clever, and then something completely different happened. I was like, whoa, I've been tricked. But yeah, it's a really cool feeling when a book just keeps you on your toes to like the very end. And Surin just became like even more cooler, if that was possible. By the end, like she does some very interesting things, let's say. One thing that when I looked up reviews of this on Goodreads and all, a lot of people didn't like it because it had a quest storyline. And I don't know why people don't appreciate a good quest storyline. That's so strange. That's one thing I absolutely loved about this, because the other three books, they didn't really, I mean, they had a strong plot, but it was a very confusing plot. This, it's like, it's not that straightforward either, because there are a lot of twists and turns, but like the overarching plot, it's a quest, and I love quests. And in this, they're like constantly traveling from one place to the other, and I really love to see that. So yeah, I enjoyed that part of it immensely, even though it wasn't to everyone else's taste. But now it ended on a cliffhanger, and I don't have the second book, and now I'm like devastated. I will read that book eventually. Maybe in a couple of months I'll acquire it and read it then. But for now I'll have to like cook in the suspense. It's quite unfortunate, but that shows how incredible of a book this was anyway. Much better than Fog of the Air, but you do have to read it if you don't want to get spoilers. Like there are major spoilers. Like this basically gives away all three of the books. So read that, and I guess you might have to suffer through some bits and then move on to the store now, because this one is where it's at. Then we have like a complete 180 genre wise and mood wise, because yesterday I picked up Freedom in Exile and I'm currently on page 144. And this one, yes, it is difficult to get through because it talks about a lot of atrocities that the Chinese committed in Tibet, but it's also surprisingly humorous at times, like, because this is essentially a collection of the Dalai Lama's anecdotes. It's chronicled in a very chronological order. Things happen in that sequence and it's quite well edited, but sometimes like he would say something and then slip in like an incident that happened either in the past or the future, and sometimes these are actually quite funny. So yeah, it definitely lightens like that dark cloud that hangs over you when you read all this horrible stuff. I like how the way he writes this is in a very balanced way. He takes a very like balanced, neutral approach at times to writing this, because as the spiritual head of a country, it would be easy for him, and obviously right of him, to always write from the perspective of his people and the atrocities that are committed. Even though it saddens him so much, he always tries to see the goodness in everyone, even these soldiers who are like ravaging the countryside and destroying his people. He recognizes that these are people too who are ordered by their superiors to do things that they probably don't even want to do. And he definitely keeps a very optimistic outlook whenever he's meeting like a new world leader, even though we know the way that history turned out, but we see that throughout the course of the incidents, he tries to remain positive, to see the goodness in everyone. But that's something that is extremely difficult for a person in his position to do, because you're seeing your people suffering and yet you choose to believe in like the basic human consideration that any decent individual should have, yet was found sorely lacking in certain people who decided to make some terrible choices. And every time he sees these people committing all of these acts, rather than getting angry or sad, it's mostly that he is confused. Like, he genuinely cannot understand why a human being would treat another human in the way that the Chinese did. He simply cannot understand like what drives a person to do such heinous acts. And that has prompted me to think of the incidents that happened in a different light too. Sometimes it's very suffocating to read some of the paragraphs because you already know what's going to happen in the future. And yet you're like reading this as he tries to, piece together the crumbling bits of his country. It's like very sad to read, but it also makes you think quite a lot. Like, if something went in a different way, if an incident occurred or something was stopped, how different the entire world would be now. That's what I considered. For example, I just finished reading the chapter in which he came to India for the Buddha Jayanti celebrations, and he was conversing with like the Prime Minister at the time, Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India. And then Nehru refused to help him because he's like, there's nothing we can do for Tibet. I'm sorry, it's like China's internal matter. And I just think, what if India helped Tibet at that time? Because then we would not be sharing an immediate border with China, which means the people along our borders would be safe. There wouldn't be any need to, constantly send our troops there to prevent the Chinese from encroaching and falsely occupying Indian land. For example, what's happening in Aksai Chin in Ladakh, and also what happens honestly every 10 years in Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh. None of these incidents would be taking place if we had stepped in at that time. And perhaps then East Turkestan wouldn't have fell to China and be now proclaimed Xinjiang over there. That wouldn't have happened. Maybe then what is currently considered Inner Mongolia and Manchuria, which is like the homeland of the Jurchen people, maybe these regions too would have tried to stay away from Chinese control. And perhaps then China would only be a fraction of the size that it is today, which means it wouldn't have been so dominant in world politics. I mean, they would have been, but they wouldn't pose as much as a danger to the world as currently some of the things that's going on there. It's honestly terrifying, to live in a country that shares a border with another nation like that. You never know when something can happen. Thankfully, I don't live anywhere near those borders, and my heart goes out to my fellow country people who live there, because I don't know how you can get through the night thinking that the next morning you'll wake up to see your entire livelihood decimated. And that's what happened to the Tibetan people. So it's just horrific to read about, but it's also very important that we educate ourselves to the current occurrences. Because recently on YouTube, I've been seeing a lot of videos of like foreigners, usually white people in China. They like go around in Xinjiang and Tibet and try to pass it off like China never did anything. They liberated these regions. The people there were backward and in need of guidance by China or whatever. And those just make me so angry. And when Tibetan people come in the comments and be like, the hell are you talking about? Do you even know what happened? They just say that the Tibetan people, okay, their ancestors who suffered have been like exposed to too much propaganda by the West, and then they spin the tales of like evil landowners in Tibet who used to mutilate their serfs. And I'm not saying that Tibetan society was perfect. In fact, the Dalai Lama himself does say that it wasn't perfect, but neither was Chinese society. So what right do they have to impose their will on another country, to correct them? Why didn't they fix their mistakes first? And it also says, Tibet, it was very much stuck in the past. So that was a problem. That was the reason it fell to China, because they had this like self-isolation policy going on. They didn't want to take part in world affairs, and the Dalai Lama really regrets that they weren't more open to the world, because then the country's fate would have been very different. So because of that, they were still stuck in like an olden time period, like during the feudal ages. But it wasn't as harsh in Tibet as it was during the feudal time period in pretty much every other region in the world. Like the things that happened in China during those times, like the medieval period, were like terrible. And Tibet was miles ahead of that. Yet they weren't, up to date. They weren't like caught up with the current occurrences. Because of that, they seemed outdated. But that doesn't give China any right to like step in and take matters into their own hands. They shouldn't have done that. And because of that, they have basically condemned a large portion of the world to like living in constant fear of their lives. And that is no way to live. So yeah, that's Freedom in Exile, and I think I'll finish it within 2 days. I'm sorry I went on that rant, but this topic makes me very emotional. Like, it just makes me feel so sick and tired of everything and so frustrated that I can't really do much to help what's happening. So yeah. And now on a brighter note, I made quite a lot of progress on the spell shop. So I haven't been reading my 10% every day like I usually do, because these days I'm just way too tired. As soon as I hit the bed, I just like fall asleep. So because of that, I haven't made as much progress as I should, but it's still substantial. So I'm currently, I think, at the 24% mark. I did read quite a bit today when I was like commuting to and fro from my class. And yeah, it's like so, it has definitely maintained that very like sweet, comforting vibe throughout. I think the trope in this would be like, I guess, grumpy ex sunshine, the grumpy sunshine trope, but in this, the woman is grumpy and the guy is sunshine, which you never see. So I really like that, because I hate the grumpy sunshine trope usually, because it's just so overdone and like over exaggerated, and it just feels so weird to read because no one really behaves like that in real life. This one, not only is the trope like very neutral, I also like that the usual roles are reversed, because I like tropes as long as they're like the gender bent version, I guess. Because like the usual tropes, I'm so bored and sick of them, and some of them give me the ick. But as soon as you reverse the roles, it automatically becomes like so cool. So yeah, I'm enjoying that. I like our main character, though at times she says things which are like very, in a social situation, I'm like, that you shouldn't have said that. But yeah, that's like how it is, because she's an antisocial person, hasn't really interacted much with humans, let's say. So yeah, sometimes like she's very harsh and judgmental towards others, but then I think across the book she slowly learns to open up and behave more compassionately towards others, which is great to see. And I really love how it's like very slice of life, right? So we see her fixing up her parents' cottage and then learning to make jam or like tending to the plants in the garden. I really love all of these like mundane aspects of everyday life written in books. Like I find those very comforting to read. And this one, it also focuses a lot of like the spells on magic, but not on like the showy part, on like the very formulaic steps for like doing a spell, like collecting these ingredients, cutting them up, and then saying these words in this order and like mixing them together. It's all like very like formulaic, and I really love that. I think that's the reason why I love chemistry, because like, you know, in the lab you have to follow like a set of steps, like put this reagent in that solution and then you can see this reaction happen. Like I love, you know, step-by-step stuff. Like instruction manuals are so fun. That makes me sound weird, but I do enjoy them. I like things when they're like ordered step by step. So this I've been enjoying quite a lot. And then plot-wise, basically this island, right, the one she's on, it's called Caltray, and this one's on the outskirts. So because of the restrictions on magic that the previous emperor imposed, that's why the rebellion happened, because, you know, the emperor forbade anyone other than like the official sorcerers to work magic. And because of that, and these sorcerers, they used to be sent out to the outer islands to like help them grow crops or like tend to like the mer horses. They're like this horse dolphin mermaid hybrid thing. Yeah, anyway, so to tend to them or like predict weather patterns and like control storms, like those kind of stuff that require magic, I guess, in this world. But then this emperor stopped sending them out for a while, so the outer islands have been really suffering because now there's like no one to do that. And also on the central islands, where they're like working all kinds of freaky spells, it puts the weather out of whack. So even naturally the things that would be a bit tedious to do but you could do, that is also a problem, because the crops are literally not growing because the soil has been affected, the weather patterns are unpredictable. And so our main character Kiela sees all of this, and she decides she's going to help them by opening a spell shop, like doing not such flashy spells, just like mundane stuff, easy things, you know, to help the people get by, to make their plants grow a bit faster, or to like help with the birthing of the mer horses, stuff like that. But then obviously she can't advertise it like, oh my god, I have a spell shop here which is highly illegal and could get me killed and you all killed too, but you should still come and buy it anyway. So instead of that, she decides to make part of her shop into like this jam store where she would be selling different types of jam, because on this island there is obviously a dearth of jam because the fruit trees aren't blooming properly, the bushes aren't bearing fruit. Because of that, there are not many like fruits or berries around to make jam with. So because of that, she decides that she's going to use her magic spells to like grow these berries and then make jam and sell them to the people. And that would be like a front for her actual business, which is the spell shop, because like she has stolen some books illegally from the library along with her, right? So she's referring to that to do all of this. And yeah, I'm enjoying this. It feels like so cozy and autumnal. I don't know what autumnal is supposed to feel like. Where I live, we do not have autumn. Like I've never seen a tree shed its leaves in winter or turn that completely reddish orange hue. I've never seen that happen. But I guess this is what autumnal vibes are supposed to be like, so I can imagine myself, you know, seeing all of that happening. So yeah, it's really fun so far. I will update you when I have more things to update. It's day 12 and it's time for my daily update. So I'm currently on page 212 of Freedom in Exile, and this has been going, I mean, I wouldn't say it's going quite well, because the things happening, as I have mentioned on several occasions, are very difficult to read. And yeah, I haven't been, like reading it that quickly because firstly, this isn't a book that is meant to be rushed through. You have to like take your time trying to understand the events that occur. And I'm trying to like accord it the proper respect that it deserves, a book such as this. And yeah, at times, I have to like actually put the book down and just like stare off into space because it's kind of difficult to even imagine the magnitude of the pain and suffering that this entire nation has been through. So yeah, and this was written I think several years ago. When was this published? Yeah, it was published in 1998, this edition of the book. Since then, there have been more like revised, updated editions. So I don't know which edition is this. Probably the ones in like the 2000s because that's when I bought this. But yeah, despite the decades that have elapsed, no significant progress seems to have been made regarding the Tibetan cause, and I find that deeply distressing. Because in this book, in certain pages, we see so much optimism about the future, and even now, in like 2024, nothing much has really transpired. And that makes me so very sad. So, reading this from the future, because like the events that are being talked about even like in the current timeline of writing this book, it's pretty much in the past now. So as a person reading it many decades later, it's just I yeah, sometimes it's like I get choked with emotion and I can't continue. So I feel like that's a sign to not put this down. I'll still be reading this, but maybe also pick up a lighter read on the side, to make sure that I don't dig myself into a hole of sorrow regarding this. So yeah, I think I should probably pick up Girl Who Drank the Moon because that is a thicker book that I do need to get through. I do want to read at least 2 books this week. I don't know how well that would go because I only have 2 days left before this week is over. So that would be an issue, but we'll see how that goes. And apart from that, I'm also 31% through The Spell Shop. That is a book that I've been tremendously enjoying. It's just so fun to read, especially when I'm about to settle in for the day, go to sleep. Like it's the perfect reading before getting a good night's rest. And there have also been several like passages to do with reading that really resonated with me because this is also a book about books, right? It's about, finding knowledge in the pages of a book that's going to save you and your community. So yeah, that's been really cool. One of the earlier paragraphs about that, it's something which I totally relate to. It goes like this. It wasn't that she didn't like people. It was only that she liked books more. They didn't fuss or judge or mock or reject. They invited you in, fluffed up the pillows on the couch, offered you tea and toast, and shared their hearts with no expectation that you would do anything more than absorb what they have to give. And I mean, that is so true. That's one of the main reasons I love reading so much because I feel so safe amidst the pages of a book, and it's really cool to come across paragraphs like this, which are an ode to reading. There's also really nice prose because sometimes the writing, it's not like that complex. Like it's good writing at all times. It's just that sometimes you're looking for like that kind of purple prose, and this book doesn't have that much purple prose. It has very well balanced nice prose, but sometimes you do come across certain sentences that are also quite beautiful, like this. She felt as if her blood had become the wind and her breath had become the sea spray. She tasted salt and she tasted freedom. Both were glorious. So yeah, that's quite nice writing too. So overall, this has also been a wonderful time. Speaking of beautiful writing, some passages in this are also so gorgeously written. Like this is from one of the earliest chapters, and it's describing the landscape of Tibet as the Dalai Lama and his entourage are going to Lhasa for the first time when he's like a toddler. And this is how it's described. We now entered some of the most remote and beautiful countryside in the world. Gargantuan mountains flanking immense flat plains which we struggled over like insects. Occasionally we came upon the icy rush of meltwater streams that we splashed noisily across, and every few days we would come to a tiny settlement huddled amongst a blaze of green pasture or clinging as if by its fingers to a hillside. Sometimes we could see in the far distance a monastery perched impossibly on top of a cliff, but mostly it was just arid, empty space with only savage dust-laden winds and angry hailstorms as reminders of nature's living forces. Like, how beautifully written is that? And a lot of the passages in this book are similarly very striking in the way it's written. Some of the passages can be like very matter of fact because after all this is an autobiography, but we do come across such beautiful descriptions of the Tibetan landscape or certain aspects of culture, as well as even descriptions of Buddhist ideals, which very much resonate with me as a Buddhist person. So reading it phrased in different ways, it makes me feel closer to the teachings of the Gautama Buddha himself. So yeah, this has also been a very nice experience in its own way. Both books that I'm reading currently are extremely different to each other, and yet they are such wonderful books to read. So today is the 15th of September, so technically it's like week 3 has started already, but I just wanted to like officially close off the vlog here. I didn't manage to get any more clips after the previous one you saw. I guess I haven't been reading that much either, so this update isn't really much of an update, maybe like 20 or 30 pages more than what I had updated you previously. But I'll just like let you know that I can like officially conclude this thing and start my week 3 vlog. So I'm currently on page 224 of Freedom in Exile, and I think I will finish this within 2 more days. I don't want to rush this though, because it's such a beautifully written book talking about such difficult topics, especially because these are things that happened. It's like the history of South Asia and the neighboring regions. So you really need to take your time reading it and understanding all the things that happened and how they continue to influence even modern day politics. So this is something that I have been enjoying in that sense, as in like acquiring more knowledge about this topic that I still have a lot to know about. And then yesterday I was going to eat lunch and I didn't really want to pick up Freedom in Exile because I was in the mood for something a bit lighter. So then I picked up The Girl Who Drank the Moon. As I mentioned in my week 1 video, this is technically not really a reread. So the first time I read it, I got up to around page 100, didn't continue on from there for whatever reason. But now I've gone back and started from the beginning again. So I kind of already know the things that happen until page 100, but not the details, but like the overview of what happens. But I reached up to page 14, which isn't a lot. I just read that during lunch, that's it. I haven't picked it up since then, but I made, progress, picked up my 5th book or 4th one. I think it's my 5th book, yeah. My 5th book of the readathon, and I've put a step in that direction, and throughout week 3 I guess I'll be reading this. And in addition to that, I also read quite a bit of The Spell Shop, especially when I'm commuting. As of now, The Spell Shop has become my commute book rather than like the book I read before bed, because when I'm on the bus, I really don't feel like taking out my book because I don't want people to see that I'm reading. I don't know, I guess they can see that I'm reading. It's just more convenient to, take my phone in which I have the book downloaded, because I don't want, the main reason is that I don't want my physical books to get damaged. Like, it's sitting in my bag, but I don't really want to risk the book coming out and something suddenly happening. Better to just read on my phone. So that's what I've been doing. I think I'm on the 41% mark. I'm not sure, maybe I've read more than that. Maybe I'm nearly, I think I reached nearly the 50% mark, and that has been going quite well too, enjoying it tremendously. And yeah, that's all the updates for now. So now is the time for me to just shut up, conclude this vlog, and finish editing that as soon as I finish this clip. I'm nearly done with the editing, so after I make sure that this clip is in order, I'll be able to post this video by tomorrow or the day after at the most. So yeah, I guess I'll see you in my new video. If you enjoyed this, please do let me know in the comments down below. Give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. I look forward to catching you all in my new video. See you later. 再见.